Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahabushai, Bahasham, Barakahakudash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the Brother Ra'aya with another video, and in this video, I'll be profiling an article from naturalnews.com titled, Poll, 44% of Americans believe a civil war is coming, and a second civil war will take place on the streets of the United States of America. It's all a part of biblical prophecy. These Americans are about to go at each other's throats. This is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. And this isn't talking about the ancient Egyptians who were Hamites or so-called Africans, Mizraim. This is talking about the modern day spiritual Egyptians, these Edomites or so-called white people in the United States of America, which is biblically known as spiritual Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. And they shall fight, everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom, a second civil war in the United States of America. And it's clear to see that these Edomites out here are divided on damn near every issue, from politics with conservatives versus liberals, Republicans versus Democrats, a religion with so-called religious Edomites against atheistic Edomites, from sex with men versus women, with movements like MGTOW versus feminism, with gender identity, with so-called straight Edomites against Edomites in the alphabet group beginning with LG, low-level average Joe Edomites against Edomites that have more money, class warfares, and even Edomites against, and even, again, regular Edomites against Edomites in the government, a seditious spirit. And all these things are quickly coming to a head. And when we read articles like that, it just lets us know how close we are to seeing these Egyptians really going against these Egyptians out here. And with inflation and hyperinflation hitting, which is leading to a $5 a gallon gas, who knows how long before it's $10 to $15 a gallon gas, food prices going up, food shortages and shortages of other items coming. Now there's a tampon shortage out here, people no longer being able to afford their bills and getting evicted out of their houses, etc., etc. That's only going to exacerbate this seditious civil war spirit amongst these modern day spiritual Egyptians. The Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, poll showed that 44% of Americans believe that the United States is headed toward another civil war, which includes 53% of Republicans and 39% of Democrats. Listen to this. While this is a cause for concern, another poll showed that 1 in 5 individuals somewhat approve of assassinating politicians whom they believe were harming the country or U.S. democracy, also a part of biblical prophecy. And again, these Egyptians going against these Egyptians, these average everyday Egyptians going against these Egyptians in the government. This is 2 Esdras chapter 15, verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men. And when you look at the definition for that word sedition, it means conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. And we just saw from that paragraph that there is speech inciting a rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch, with a poll showing that 1 in 5 Americans believe assassination of a politician is acceptable if those politicians are working against the United States and democracy. And eventually it's going to be physical conduct out here with these people going at these politicians' throats. And I did an article a little while ago showing that with each passing year, when they do these different polls, more and more people are open to committing acts of political violence against people in the government and invading one another, they shall not regard their kings nor princes. And your modern day kings and princes are these people in the government: mayors, governors, senators, prime ministers, presidents, etc., as well as the authorities that uphold the system, like the police or the military. Hey, once these Egyptians really start going at each other, they're not going to regard anything. It's going to be every man for himself out here. Dog eat dog, as it says, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Nearly 7 in 10 also agreed that left-wing politicians were deliberately driving economic changes to gain power by replacing conservative white voters, Edomite voters, with non-Edomites entering the country in what is called the replacement theory. And also, amongst this civil war going on in the United States of America between these Edomites, hey, there's also going to be race wars as well, which is a part of biblical prophecy. This is Isaiah chapter 13. I'm going to start at verse 14. And it shall be as the chaste roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. And when civil unrest and chaos really breaks out into the streets of the United States of America, people are going to get tribal and go back to their own and defend their own. Just think about the Rodney King riots back in the 90s when all those Moabites or so-called Koreans got together to go against those Jakes to stop them from looting their stores. In this case, everybody's going to be back with their own people going against each other. And hey, to you Edomites out there that think you're going to have another great crusade to take the country back, that's not going to be the case. While all these different nations out here are going to be fighting each other, hey, they're all going to be against you as well, and they're going to get a piece of you when they can. You're that chaste roe in verse 14. Everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. So to all you nations out there that have friends who are of another nation or tribe, if you're found not amongst your people and amongst their people in that day, you're going to get put down. And since we're only talking to you Israelites out there, or you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, let me give you an example. If you're a so-called black man or Judite, it doesn't matter if you've lived in a suburban neighborhood for many years and have a good so-called white man or Edomite friend living next door to you, and y'all have barbecued at each other's houses or been to each other's kids' sports games. In that day, you're going to be fighting against each other like bitter enemies. And to a lot of you so-called black women out there, you Judite women that like to get with these white men and have kids, they're going to put you and the children to death in that day. Verse 15, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Kids getting put to death. Their houses shall be spoiled. Men invading one another. As it says in 2 Ezra chapter 15, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall spoil his house with the force of the sword, due to the lack of bread and for great tribulation. And their wives ravished. Their wives being raped, as we'll put it. Hey, we're coming into some very nasty times. And to you sincere Akim and Akwat out there that come across this video, you better be doing everything you can to stay in the good graces of your power, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, so you can be saved from these calamities of Jacob's trouble, which are quickly coming our way. Skip around a little bit. What we found was a great deal of hostility for people on the other side of the political aisle. A majority of both Republicans and Democrats believe their political opponents pose a threat to the country and want to harm their political opponents. The SPLC said in its report that kind of animosity could fuel partisan violence, which is exactly what it's going to fuel. 2015 U.S. military exercise triggered a cascade of conspiracy theories. The U.S. already put in place some parameters in case things could take a turn for the worse. In 2015, the U.S. military conducted a routine exercise in the South that triggered a cascade of conspiracy theories. Some people believed the maneuver was a precursor to a Chinese invasion, while others thought it was in preparation for a massive asteroid strike. Dark fantasy websites said the exercise, which was called Jade Helm 15, stood for homeland eradication of local militants. And what a lot of those Jade Helm drills dealt with was special forces going into civilian sectors, dressed like civilians, and maneuvering around. Hey, the powers that be know that there's going to be civil unrest in this country, so they've been preparing for the longest time to be able to handle it. And then there's talk of an impending civil war, inevitable. The seeds have been planted for the next American Civil War. I don't think anything stops it now. Today, almost half of Republicans and Democrats believe in using violence to achieve political ends, a massive increase compared to less than 1/10 for each in 2017 or the year Trump took office. The U.S. has since become a factionalized anocracy, which is just halfway between autocracy and democracy that is quickly approaching the open insurgency stage. With violence now part of the U.S. political language, novelists like Canadian national Stephen Marsh imagine disunion among the states, with the country being one spectacular act of violence away from a national crisis. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. Back in 2 Esdras chapter 15, verse 15, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. One group of people with a different political ideology against another group of people with a different political ideology, one class of people against another class of people, the average Joe against the government, one race of people against another race of people, etc., and swords in their hands. And the modern day sword, especially in the United States of America, is that gun. And what do we see happen as a result of the George Floyd riots back in 2020, as well as the lockdowns? An uptick in new gun ownership, and best believe those guns will be used. Hey, we're living in beautiful times, Akim. As it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 25, I believe, one of the things that the Most High loves to see, and we should love to see as well, is the downfall of our enemies, which we're seeing the downfall of our main enemies, these Edomites, especially in the United States of America, right before our very eyes. And what does it say in Mark chapter 3? And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And we can clearly see that the kingdom of Esau, Edom, is divided and about to fall. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.